Welcome to this tutorial on setting up Dashboard Builder metrics. In this tutorial, we'll cover how to set up the data metrics that make up the data dashboards. Whether you have the Professional Edition or the Standard Edition, the common feature is the metric dashboards. The first thing we'll do is click on Manage Metrics. Now here you can see you can search by keyword. We've also got at the top an indicator of whether this metric is valid, or it will indicate if it is not yet validated. So let's go ahead and go down to the bottom and click New and create a new metric. The first thing is a metric name. The metric name will appear on the dashboard. Down below, enter what you would like the user to see when they hover over the metric. Next, in the metric type, you'll want to select either a sum to add values, count if you're going to count records in the database, average if you'll be averaging values, maximum or minimum will simply locate the maximum or minimum value for a set of data you're looking at. Compound metrics we'll cover in a moment. That's where you can combine multiple metrics together and add them, divide them, or other types of operations. Let's select count. The data source. This is the query or table in your database, or in fact linked to your database, that's going to contain the data we want. In this case, let's select table order. The next option is a date range. You can choose to look at all data in the data source, or you might want to limit it. There's several options: today, month to date, many different options. All time will simply select all records. In this case, we've said the metric will be for today. If you select the exact date range, it will prompt you to enter what the dates are for that particular range. The value field. For a count, nearly any field is suitable. If you are doing something like a sum, average, maximum, or minimum, you'll want this to be a numeric value field, such as total price, quantity. But in this case, we can just use order ID, since we're simply counting orders in the database. We need to select a date field in our database, and Dashboard Builder will use that to determine how to collect the record. We've just completed the required fields. We'll get to the below advanced settings in just a moment, but you'll see it says this metric has not been verified. Let's go ahead and validate it. And you'll see this metric returns a value of 5. Now you'll note that we said we wanted to collect today's orders except for Betty's. So let's go ahead and look at the advanced options here. The first is a display format. Essentially, you can select from many different formats. In this case, we know that orders counted will always be a round number, so we'll just say number with no decimals. Down here in the SQL where is where we can optionally put some sort of criteria that will further filter this particular metric. Let's go ahead and look at this table, the orders table, and we know that there's a field called employee that happens to have all the values that we are interested in limiting the data by. So what I'm going to do is use an open square bracket and employee. The square brackets open and close signify a field. This is important in cases where you might have a space in the field name or an odd character. This helps Microsoft Access and Dashboard Builder interpret what is a field name versus perhaps what is text. Next we'll say not equal to, and then in quotes we type Betty. This means what we're going to do is count all of today's orders except where the employee equals Betty. If I click validate, suddenly it's telling me there's only 3 records that match that, so Betty had 2 of the orders for today. You can use this and add things like and clauses. So as an example, perhaps we want to say where it's not equal to Betty, and we will further filter the data. And in this case, when we click validate, we'll see the value come back as 1. So only one product A was sold today by someone other than Betty. The next thing you'll see is a green limit and a red limit. On the dashboards, you'll notice the red and green meters here. Essentially what you can do is set what you want those values, those thresholds to be. So as an example, for orders this month, we probably have a very low number like 0 for a red level and something like 100 for the green level. And this gauge, this dial, will change based on how you've set those two thresholds up. So in this case, we'll simply say that we want a good number is 10 orders today, and perhaps the bad number is 1. Now note you can flip these. So if a high number is bad and a low number is good, let's say product returns, you'd want to flip these values because of course you want fewer returns than you might with orders where it's going to be a high positive number. You must have these two fields filled out in order to create a meter. If one of these doesn't have a value in it, then when you select from the optional meters to show on your dashboard, this particular metric won't appear. Now lastly, one option we have is perhaps the red limit should be something like the annual average orders per day, some other metric you've established in the database. If you click on the little edit button here, you'll see the list of other metrics in your database. And you might say that you want to use one of these metrics, maybe yesterday's orders, as the red limit. So maybe we're always trying to do better than yesterday, and so if the red limit is yesterday's orders, then we know we're doing better than yesterday when we see this meter. You can do the same with the green limit as well. If you want to remove this option, simply click the edit button and say use a value I enter, and there you go. So now we've got that. The drill down form. If you have a form in your database that uses this same data source and you'd like when a user clicks on the metric to pop up that form using all of this selection criteria, you'd want to select it here from the list. If you don't have a form, you can check the create query, and what will happen is when a user selects the metric on the dashboard, this will pop up dynamically with a query that's created that instant to display the data underlying this metric. And lastly, category is just whatever you'd like to type in this field. So it's just a way to categorize, to be able to search by. Dashboard Builder doesn't use this in any other way. So now we've got our metric. Let's go ahead and put it on a dashboard. Say edit dashboard. Now when I select from here, you'll notice this today's orders, except Betty, is available. If we hadn't filled out the red and green threshold, we wouldn't see this in the list. And that's clear from the fact that now when we click here, you'll see we've got many more metrics available. Now the category is a way to sort. Again, Dashboard Builder doesn't use it for any other use. We select that metric that we wanted. Let's go ahead and we need to type in a name for this particular box. And now when we click Open Dashboard, you'll see the orders today. Now the last example I'd like to show you is how to create what's called a compound metric. So let's go ahead and go to that metric we just created, which was ID 110. Now let's say we want to search for yesterday's order. We type in yesterday. So yesterday's orders is metric ID 13. So 110 and 113. So now I'll create a new metric, and I want to say this is a compound metric, which means I'm going to take two metrics and compare them, add them, divide them, etc. In brackets I'm going to type, effectively what I've said is find the difference in orders from today and yesterday, and then divide that by yesterday's orders to see what sort of growth we had. We can select a display format. In this case we'll say we might want this to be %, and in this case it says 0% growth. Now why would that be? Well, let's go look at yesterday's orders. If we click validate, we'll see a preview. We had one order yesterday. So now let's go back to that new metric we had created, and let's go ahead and remove the product constraint there. So it's going to now return back the 3 rows, 3 records. Now let's go back to our compound metric. We've changed it so we have 3 orders today and we know we had 1 yesterday. When I click validate, I'll see we had a 200% growth in orders. So that's how you can set up a compound metric to evaluate several different metrics. Thanks for watching this tutorial. We hope it's been helpful, and enjoy using Dashboard Builder.